Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. Hello. Oh my goodness, Janet is back in Massachusetts. What?
Hi, Karen. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Good. I live my world travels through her.
Oh, my. I feel bad because I can't keep up with things and I'm getting ready to go again tomorrow night.
Gee, life is tough.
Yes.
Lucky you. Awesome. Should we wait just a minute or two more? Couple more names that signed up that I'm not seeing, but and Julia's here on the heels of graduating from high school. Good for you. We're glad to share the space with you. All right, Carrie, why don't we get started? People can join us as we um, launch into our intro, perhaps. So thank you for being with us. This is kind of a meeting that brings such activity to culmination, truly, as we wind down our MVP phase two grant and the work with the advisory committee and advisory group starts to come to a little bit of a taper, I guess, that will hope to be funded in our next stage and move forward with some new work with you all. So that's what this is about. We're going to kind of review some of what we've accomplished in our phase two model and talk about some of the tools, the plans that have come to fruition and get your insight and input on those. And then we'll move into talking about what our next grant is that we're proposing and how you all might be able to help and support and give us some insight on that as well. So that's our general overview. Why don't we go into our intro? We'll do name, pronouns, organization, and then if you were given an option to choose a different career field, would you? And even if you're retired, maybe whatever your field is that you consider having been most active in your career. So I'm gonna point and people out to introduce themselves just so we keep it moving quickly. So Radoshi, why don't you start us off and then have Janet follow you.
Great. Thanks, Karen. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Rodoshi Sinha. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm an environmental planner at MAPC. I think if I wasn't in this position, I would love to be an artist. I would love to just spend all my time outdoors with a canvas and maybe a glass of wine and just paint to my heart's glory.
That's awesome. All right, Janet, and then how about we go to Echo?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Janet Briseno, and my pronouns are the she series. Currently, I am an administrative officer at Northeastern University. I work in the Network Science Institute and Laser Labs. And in my lifetime, I've worn so many different hats. I don't know that I'll want to pick anything right now, but I've been a teacher for at least 20 years. I worked as a senior program leader at Bay Cove Human Services. I've worked as executive directors of agencies. I've done all kinds of administrative work. And so I think I enjoy what I do right now. So I think because of my personality, administration suits me fine and I'll just stay there. Although right now I'm so very busy with so many things going on. But I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks. Echo, and why don't we follow you with Martin?
Hi, everyone. Echo Bergquist. She, her pronouns. And I work with an affordable housing developer nonprofit organization. And I do love my career field. But I think if money were no object, I would just run a summer camp for kids in the woods somewhere. That would be awesome.
Nice. All right, Martin, and then how about Cynthia?
Thank you. Martin Pillsbury, he, him. I'm at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, where I'm the Director of Environmental Planning. And I don't really want to choose a different career because I love the one I have. But if I could be cloned and have a second chance for something else to go on, I would be torn between two options. One would be a sailboat captain, where I would take people for cruises. And the other, very differently, I would be a jazz guitarist. So one if by land and two if by sea.
That's great. Thanks. Cynthia, then how about Carrie?
Thank you. My name's Cindy Tracy, and I do leadership development and learning. I don't think I I love my career. I watch people grow, and I help with that, and gives me personal satisfaction. If I wanted to do something, something else. It would have to be with somehow with animals. I haven't had any leadership development discussions with any animals recently. I don't know, when they start talking to me, you'd probably have to, turn me in somewhere. But anyway, that's pretty much it. And I'm sorry, she, her.
Thanks, Cynthia. After Carrie, how about Vivian?
Hi, so I'm Carrie Snyder. I'm the Managing Director for Community Resilience at the Neponset River Watershed Association. I too like what I do. I like being a lawyer. I like working in the environment. Yeah, if money were no object and I had a second chance, I would probably do a lot more crafting, have an Etsy shop, and do my fiber arts. And I use she series pronouns.
Awesome. Vivian, and then Ian. Why don't we go to you, Ian? Maybe Vivian's
Sure.
doing something else.
I'm Ian Cook, and I work for NEPRA, he, him. And I did pretty well because I've been enjoying my first real job for a long time, and very happy to continue. But if I had to do it all over again, one possibility would be to be Martin and join him on that sailboat. I would be useless with the guitar. And perhaps, just being a handyman and going around and fixing things could be a soothing second act, maybe if I retire someday.
Awesome. Kendra, how about you? And then Julia.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kendra Beaver. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Climate Justice Coordinator at the Fairmount Indigo CDC Collaborative. And I always think it would have been cool to do a career that was very physical, like a dancer or a figure skater. I don't personally think I have the skills for that, whether or not money is the thing, but yeah, I always think about kind of the opposite of an office job would be cool.
Awesome.
So I don't know, can you hear me or?
Yeah, sure. You want to go, Vivian?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm using my phone. I usually use my laptop. So I'm Vivian Morris with the Edgewater Neighborhood Association, also Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition. And
Oops, you went mute. That's always a problem on the phone, I know.
so sorry. Anyway,
It's
I'm
all
just
right.
saying.
We heard Mattapan Food and Fitness. Oops.
I'm not sure what else I would want to do.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks. Julia, and then how about Imgard?
Hi, I'm Julia. My pronouns are she, her. I'm part of the environmental club at my school, and I'm also part of the Nord Sustainability Commission. Um, I don't have a job, but I'm thinking about majoring in psychology. But if not, then I would probably be a professional dancer.
Excellent. Imgard, and then Nicole and Anna.
Um, so I'm Edgar Balo. She, her is fine. I'm here representing the League of Women Voters of Westwood, Walpole, and Dedham. That's the organization that I'm representing. In my other spare time, I work as an infectious disease physician, scientist. I don't think there's enough things in the world that I have enough hours to do for all the other things I like to do. I like gardening. I did photography. My sight's gotten a little worse, so it's hard to get things in focus sometimes. I think there's just a lot to be done, and I think maybe it's through because of some frustration in both medical stuff. I think activism has sort of taken another role. It's a hard trek, I have to say. Seems to be really slow, and then you go backwards, and then you go forwards. And I really admire all of you. Thanks.
Thanks, Imgard. Nicole, and then Anna. Well, Anna's probably navigating by phone as well. You want to take it, Anna, and we'll go back to Nicole?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Yee. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for the Neponset River Watershed Association. I'm pretty happy with this field. I think it's important work, but I guess, wow, there are so many good alternative options. If money and skills were no object, I think I'd like to do something in like maybe movies or production design, something fun and artsy.
That's awesome. Nicole, are you able to come off mute? Jean, did I get you?
Not yet. I can join.
Awesome. Take over, Jean.
Okay, I use the she, her pronouns. I live in Norwood. I was an environmental engineer until the company that I work for eliminated my job. And so I'm still doing environmental work through the Trails Committee and the NEPRA Committee. And learning, finding my way in both places. And if I had the opportunity to do something else, for most of my early career and life, I supported a son who had significant neurological disabilities. So I'm sad he's dead, but I'm grateful to have the freedom to do more stuff in the community. And I'm finding my way. I don't know what the path is exactly. It's not being a jazz musician. It's not painting outside, although some of those sound great. I actually think I'll get more involved in healthcare advocacy because the Norwood Hospital is toast and we don't have a clinic that can do radiology for certain types of chemo and stuff. So I think we need to restore those in our community. So anyway.
Thanks, Jean. I appreciate that. Awesome. Nicole, are you able to?
I hope so. I hope you can hear me. I had some microphone issues.
That's okay. We can hear you.
I'm Nicole Holmeyer. I'm she, her. I'm here representing the Dedham Junior Women's Club, and I'm on the Environment Committee for the DJWC. And I'm pretty happy with my career. Maybe wasn't so earlier, but I'm a scientist. I'm a scientist by training. I do government defense work now, and yeah, I think I like it. It turned out okay so far. Happy to be here.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. So quickly for me, Karen Gross-Horan, and Community Engagement Strategist at NEPRA, She Series. And I loved the interjection about animals. It reminded me that when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a veterinarian. And right now, expenses wouldn't be so much for my animals if I had taken that route. But that definitely would be a second choice. But love the environmental work and the environmental justice space. So couldn't be happier with what I'm doing now. Excellent. We got everyone, right? I couldn't possibly leave anyone out. So thank you all for sharing and getting to know a little bit more about you and each other. So back to our agenda. Why don't we launch the polls? The first two poll questions. Did we split them into 4, Carrie?
There were 4 questions, but there are 2 questions in this
poll. Awesome. So yeah, we'd love your insight, as we reflect back on our experience together. How would you rate your experience? And yeah, thought it was a waste of time, and found it quite valuable up at 10. And then if there are if there's one thing you wish that we had covered that we didn't, or that you wish that we could have gone more in depth on, please share your answer with us.
That'll be the second question.
Exactly.
So are people seeing the poll? Okay, somebody's
Yes.
filling it out, so you must be seeing it. And both of the questions are available right now, I think. Or both of the first set of questions.
Yes.
I always find Zoom polls slightly confusing for some reason. Karen, let me know when you're ready to close this.
Okay. How's it looking? Like you're able to see responses coming in?
Yep.
Ian, or
They're trickling
71% have.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty good, because figuring some of us on the project team might not be responding, right?
Right.
So that is probably, does everybody feel like they've had time to respond and answer, or we need another few seconds? Thumbs up. Okay. People on your phone, have you been able to respond as well? No, that might be a little bit different. Okay. All right. Why don't we see what we have?
Do we want to share the results?
Why not?
There we go.
Awesome. So great. Looks like half people had a very good experience. And even sevens up through 10. Sounds pretty good. Sounds like it was a worthwhile experience, and why you've continued to come back and contribute and share the space with us and learn with us. So that's great. We appreciate it. Now, did we see answers to the second one?
Oh, sorry. I'm seeing them. I'm not sure what you guys are seeing. Looks like a lot of people have suggestions for.
We're only seeing the first question scale here.
Okay, yeah, we're only seeing the first part. Maybe we can.
Do you have to scroll down, maybe? See the second?
That's not working either.
Yep. No.
I know I have to scroll down to see it.
It just says,
still not seeing short answers, but
it says 75% answered. Just it doesn't show what the answers are.
Ah, I don't see the answers either, so we may have to look into what happened to the short answers.
Okay. Well, thank you all. That will be helpful information, and we'll see if we can figure that out. Excellent. So for the next portion of our meeting, we are moving to Anna, who's going to talk about the flood modeling and give you all a walkthrough of what flood modeling looks like and has revealed to us in our phase 2 grant.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Carrie, can I have screen sharing? Is that all right? Okay, can everyone see my slides all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so I just want to walk everyone through the flood model, and then we'll do a little bit of a demo, but just a little bit of background. As part of this project, we worked with Weston and Sampson to develop a regional flood model. And so it's a computer-based model that analyzes rainfall, surface runoff, and water movement through the stormwater systems in the Neponset to understand current and future flooding risks. And so when I say stormwater systems, we mean both built infrastructure, so culverts that pass under roads, storm drains, and pipes underground, as well as the surface water, so streams and ponds and all of those that feed into the Neponset. So here is just a picture of what the flood model looks like. And here you can see on the on the left, it's showing a % change in runoff volume between our no action baseline scenario, a 10-year, 24-hour storm. So no action scenario baseline today is sort of our 10-year, 24-hour storm today. And the difference between that amount of rainfall and the 2070 no action. So again, sort of if we didn't do any sort of preventative measures, looking at the change in overall volume of stormwater that we would be expected to see across the watershed. And as you can see, the more intense colors, meaning that we're seeing more and more stormwater in those areas of the watershed. So on average, the model predicts a 70% increase in total runoff if no action is taken by 2070 for this 10-year storm event. And really what we're using the model for is to get a more accurate representation of flooding risks across the watershed, as well as a better understanding of the flood extents and depths across the watershed. And then it also helps us visualize future flooding risks and evaluate those strategies and the benefits that we might see for stormwater interventions. I see someone has their hand up.
Yeah, hi. So Emgard. So a question I have is, given this newer sort of anticipated, so when we think about a 50-year storm or a 100-year flood, how does those compare to this sort of model? Like, what happens to that 100-year and 50-year flood lines? Have they been moving up? I mean, are they changing? Are they going to anticipate it to also worsen? I mean, this flood line is it a 10-year storm? I mean, I just want to make sure I'm kind of clear on, so this is for a 10-year versus a 50 and 100 or 500. You know what I mean? Are they now becoming 50? Is the 500 now becoming a 50-year flood?
Yes, no, that's a great question. So if I go, let me see if I can go back a slide here. So here's a nice little comparison. We have our 10-year storm today, right, which is 5 inches in 24 hours, versus our expected 10-year storm in 2070 is going to go up to 7.1 inches in 24 hours. So we're seeing sort of a 2-inch increase expected, and this is based on projections that are provided by the state. You can't, there is more information about sort of different types of storms, whether you want to look at sort of a 50-year storm today versus a 50-year storm in the future. There's a range of projections that we can use, but just for today we're just gonna be looking at sort of a 10-year today versus a 10-year in 2070, and hopefully that answers your question.
So the question I had, because we just actually had our candidates forum yesterday, and so one of the questions I had was about stormwater, because you guys have taught me so much. And then it has to do with, like a new fire department being built. They want to build another building, and they say, oh, we're gonna have to match, we're gonna be matching like a 500-year storm, but maybe that, like what we think about that we have to match a 50-year storm, a 100-year, now we really have to be matching those more severe storms. So when we do a new building in a more area, maybe we need to really think about whether we need to change what is an acceptable, is a 100-year storm still acceptable, or should we really be raising that bar or lowering that bar, I guess.
That's a great point. I think that there are trade-offs to choosing sort of what future storm scenarios you want to be designing for, because we have some idea, right, of what we expect to see in the future, but we can't ever really know for certain the frequency or the intensity of what those storms are going to look like. We have a good idea, and so I think that it's up to sort of the discretion of the people involved, sort of what sort of planning horizon you want to think about, and sort of what what level of storm, or sort of what level of what level of occurrence you want to think about planning for. But that's a great question. Maybe we can have a little discussion at the end about sort of where people are thinking about in terms of moving their
Anna,
storms. Yes.
this is Jean Palmetier. I was thinking, I live in Norwood, and it was a couple of years ago that our hospital got badly flooded because the key elements that supported the hospital were below grade. And there was a lot of water above grade, and the parking lot flooded. And so there was just massive water from all directions. But if you're building a new public safety building, it would be good to take care to minimize the percent of it, or the elements that could be considered below grade and take on water in a bad storm, even if it's not a 100-year storm. And we had a gas station in our town that built an underground tank retention area for stormwater. And it was the first time I'd seen it in Norwood, but maybe it happens a lot. And I know that our town manager is working to get a kind of a holding account set up, if you will, so that they will have the framework for being able to talk to residents about stormwater. And I know an awful lot of people who, I love them, most of them are my friends. They're like, well, I don't have any stormwater. I have a rain garden, and I have rain barrels, and I have this. And I said, okay, well, most all of us have a house and a roof and a parking area. And even if we have a lot of good rain catching and mitigating features, we're not perfect. And, there could be a stormwater fee down the road to help the town offset charges for managing it. So anyway, that's me.
No, those are all good points. I think that there's there are ways to look at stormwater flooding from a site by site sort of specific example. And this project is looking at sort of more regionally, sort of across the watershed, because as you said, right, we might have individual sites that have some sort of stormwater infrastructure or controls, but if we're not perfect, that means that water is running off of that, and depending on where you are in the watershed, that can really have effects downstream. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so let me just move forward. So this is sort of one of the outputs of the flood model, and as I was saying, it sort of helped us visualize future flooding risks that we're expecting to see, and then help us sort of evaluate those strategies that we might want to employ when we're looking at some of our options. So, and here's just another sample of the viewer. So this is looking at instead of depth, this is looking at sort of flooding area. So just areas on the ground that are experiencing flooding. And so in this most recent phase, which is phase 2 of our flood model project, we're looking at visualizing that future flood risk and what we can do. So sort of evaluating some of our options. And as people have mentioned, we have different ways of trying to mitigate some stormwater impacts. So that includes green stormwater infrastructure, things like rain gardens or adding more pervious surface to places. We also have other options such as wetlands restoration or upland or pond storage. So that's looking to store more water in areas that are already sort of doing that naturally. We have land conservation tactics, and then we also have sort of traditional gray infrastructure. So underground storage or cisterns or pipes, things like that, that don't necessarily involve any sort of green aspect. And as part of phase 2, what we've been doing is using the model to look at what sorts of solutions would be, so whether they're green infrastructure solutions or whether they're wetland restoration, sort of looking at broad buckets of actions that can be taken, and what the model thinks would be the best sort of strategy for dealing with flooding impacts in areas across the watershed, and then looking at what sort of flood reduction we might see based on implementing those solutions. So if, I don't know who here has used the flood model viewer, when you open it up, which I will do in a moment, you can see that it's sort of going to bring you to a watershed wide view. And we have on the left sort of our summary or like overview options. And then we have additional data viewing options on the right side, that top right area. But if you just sort of want to get a little bit of a overview of the model, that's sort of that top left button under the search. So let me now get out of my slides and, okay, can everyone still hopefully see my screen here with the viewer open? So if we go into this menu right here, we can look at, and I think here I'm going to turn on all of these. These are all options that we can use, and feel free to play around with this visualization. But for now, I want to show, I'm going to turn on the FEMA 100-year regulatory floodplain. So this is a 100-year storm, which means a 1% chance of that storm happening in any given year. And so because we're using this FEMA 100-year regulatory floodplain for today, I'm going to turn on the equivalent. So this is our 2070 100-year storm flooding extents in the no action scenario. So assuming that we don't do any of these interventions that we were planning, so looking at those flooding extents, and I know that it's a little bit zoomed out, you can see sort of the edge of the watershed here, this black line, so we're looking inside. But if we zoom in, what you can see is all these areas in light blue, that's our current FEMA 100-year regulatory floodplain. And then these areas in red are all of the areas where the model predicts that there might be flooding extents in 2070 for a 100-year storm event. So as you can see, there are some areas where we have sort of overlap, where so there are areas that are in the floodplain now and will be in the floodplain in the future, but there are also areas here that we can see where there's a lot of area that is not currently in the floodplain today that we might expect to see flooding impacts in the future. So that's definitely something that we want to keep in mind. And you can sort of zoom all over here. So if you're interested in a particular town or an area in your town, it's very easy to be able to look at areas of flooding today and what we expect to see in the future. And so I also want to show, and I'm going to turn off these just to keep things a little bit simple. So we also have here, this is the no action scenario, right? So assuming that we don't do any of these interventions, the flood extent for 2070 for this 10-year storm. So that's what we're seeing in orange here. And then if I turn on this layer here, this action scenario 1. So this is, as I said before, when we used the model to evaluate solutions, this is saying, look at the best solution for all of these areas within the model, and let's implement what that is, whether that's rain gardens or whether that's upland storage or other types of solutions, and what's the result that we could hope to see from that. So if I turn on this sort of yellow-green layer, what we're seeing is we're seeing that on top of the 2070 no action scenario. So if you're zoomed out, it's a little hard to see, but if we zoom in, we can see that there are, if I'm over here sort of in Walpole, we can see that there are some areas here. So these orange areas where my cursor is, this is an area that we would expect to see flooding in 2070 for the 10-year storm if we did no actions, but if we implemented some of these solutions for areas, we would expect to see a reduction in the flood extents. So anywhere here where you see an orange layer peeking out underneath here, that's all areas that would not be flooding or hopefully not be flooded based on our sort of scenario 1. So just top solution for each catchment. And I know that that's maybe a little bit of a funny way to think about this, but it just sort of is the easiest way to show the difference between those two layers. And then the other thing that I want to touch on is that this is just looking at flooding extents. So just areas where we expect to see flooding, but it doesn't say anything about the depth in this layer, in this menu over here. So if we were interested in going a little bit deeper, and if you were interested in seeing, for example, like what sort of reduction in flood depth would we want to see across the watershed, you can use this menu up here. So this is the sort of more advanced results. And what I want to show is, so this here is the flood depth reduction. So now we're thinking about reducing the volume of water within all of those cells. And this is again our 10-year storm for 2070. So if we look here, this is the sort of the decrease in flood depth that we would expect to see if we're implementing those, just like this one here is for our no action scenario to our action scenario 1. So just implementing the first best solution across these catchments. And what you can see here is all of these areas where they still might have flooding. We're seeing, if this is in feet, we're seeing anywhere from like an inch and change to almost a foot sometimes of flood reduction. And that is really, I think, worth noting, because when we're thinking about future flooding events, obviously we want to think about additional areas where we're seeing flooding, but also thinking about connectivity and the difference that, right, 1 inch or even 6 inches of water makes on a road or around a house versus, right, like 1 or 2 feet of water. That's a really big difference. And being able to reduce these flood depths across the watershed would have a lot of impact, even if we're looking at some of these scenarios where we're still seeing some flooding extents, but definitely mitigated. And you can also, in these advanced layers, you can also show it, the depth changes, you can show them as sort of just absolute change in flood depth, or you can show a % decrease, so sort of relative to not doing anything, what are we seeing in terms of reduction here? And so this now is in a percent scale. So if you had, right, if you had maybe a foot of flooding here, and we're getting a 75 to 100% expected reduction, right? That means that we might be going from a foot of flood water depth to like 3 inches or maybe less. So sort of being able to see not only the flood extents, but also how much water we're expecting in these areas is something that you can also do with this model. And I want to be mindful of our time. So I want to open it up to see if anyone has any questions, and I'm happy to drop the link to the viewer in the chat. We would love to get some of your feedback on the flood model viewer, and yeah, let me just, I can't see the chat, so I'm not sure if there are any questions in there, but I just want to open it up and make sure that people have the chance to ask anything if you have a question.
Not seeing any written questions in the chat, but if anybody wants.
I do have a question, but I'm looking for my hand to raise the hand and I can't find it right now. So since we have Norwood on the map here, I remember like 3 or 4 years ago, there was a really bad storm in Norwood, and the hospital flooded out there, and lots of residences in the area were flooded out as well. As a matter of fact, I have a friend whose home still is not repaired after that flooding. So has anything been done to prevent that from happening again? And is it likely that that hospital could be flooded again?
Yes, so I think that that's sort of what we're in the process of identifying, right? There are, if you look at the hospital, right, there are certain things that the hospital can do on site to try and mitigate their stormwater, but when you have so much water coming from sort of upland, right, and you have that flooding moving down, you can't necessarily manage all of that water, right, or stop it from getting to the hospital. So what we're looking at is trying to find places where water is falling, where we're expecting sort of flooding or stormwater to occur, ways to mitigate that problem where the water is falling so that it doesn't make more issues downstream. And I believe that Norwood has several town efforts. So this is our regional watershed flood model. I believe that Norwood is also working on a more detailed town model to identify some more town-specific solutions in areas where they can hopefully do some mitigation to prevent some of those stormwater flooding issues that they've had in the past.
Anna? I know one of the things, I don't know for sure that first of all, we don't have an owner for the hospital. And all they're doing is buttoning it up so it doesn't get damaged right now, the construction they've done so far. But they raised the old one to the ground and they didn't put in below grade structures that I can see as part of the plan. So that's massively better. I can't tell you that it would be designed better than the last hospital, but when the flood happened, it was a concentrated 24-hour storm and it dumped tons of rain. And so not only was the parking lot flooded to like my neck level, but the underground structure got flooded so much that it knocked the freezer and the equipment over. And then the rain that was coming down from the roof drains in the roof just made it more interesting. So I know they're going to design it differently, but right now there's no owner and they're still looking to basically just leave it buttoned up until we find an owner.
That's good to know. Thanks for sharing that information.
Thank you.
Anna?
Okay.
Yeah, I was just curious about something. First of all, I wanted to congratulate the team on building this beast. It's powerful. It's awesome. I've pointed many people to it since it was launched, and I just wanted to say, congratulations on that. If I wanted to take this to Foxborough, town of Foxborough, where I sit, and want to help them to understand this better, understand that we have this, first of all, and then understand it better. So the town engineer, the selectmen, any other folks who are involved in the building process that might need a tool like this to help evaluate. Oh, there you go. Very nice. Very nice. So I'm on the peninsula. I live on the peninsula, you guys, right in the no. Anyway, but if I were to do this, what recommendations do you have as far as presenting this?
That is a great question. So I think that, and this is something that we're looking for feedback on as well. I think that it's usually helpful to start with these sort of overview layers, looking at, right, like what do we have now, right? Where do we know that it floods? Where are we're required right now to think about flooding concerns, or what's in the current FEMA floodplain versus what do we think is going to happen in the future? And then based on where we think is going to be a flood concern in the future, right? Like what can we do about that now? And I think that's where sort of some of these layers over here with the flood depth reductions come in. It would be amazing to see, right, like no increase in flooding, or like no areas, right, that even flooded in the future. But I think that realistically, right, towns have a lot of needs that they are balancing. And so trying to figure out where can we be effective, right, most, where can we sort of, where do we have opportunities for floodwater storage and stormwater mitigation, and where are those opportunities going to be really effective, and also be solutions that work for the town, just because we have identified an area as potentially very worth pursuing, right? Towns might have objections, or they might know sort of like other infrastructure projects that they want to be doing, or they might have budgetary reasons why a different site would work for the town. So I think that part of using this information is saying, right, like we have multiple options for places that we could look, but what would be sort of where would we be getting the most reduction in flooding, and making sure that we're also doing things that benefits the town, or at least using the town's resources in a way that feels effective. I see another hand raised.
Awesome. I want to say we're a little bit off, not a little bit, but we have like 2 other parts to get to that we really want feedback on. So Echo, can you hold it till the end? Write it down or write it in the chat so we can get back to it.
Yeah, and I'm happy to continue answering questions in the chat, or people can feel free to email me, and I will drop my my email there, so you can reach out if you have any questions or further feedback.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Anna. That was awesome. So very thorough. Great. So now we're going to go to Radoshi, and she's going to talk about the Resilient Neponset Climate Collaborative work that we've been doing, and kind of how we've come out of things. Oh, sorry about that, Carrie. Yeah, I was over. You want to go back to that slide? I'm sorry. Yeah, so as far as the flood model viewer, Anna was just so very thorough in getting us introduced here. We'll provide you with the links, and if you want to go in and kind of play with it, kind of see what it does, what you learn from it, let us know what information could be clearer or could make it easier. And if you were to get a tutorial on it, would you prefer a written tutorial or a video tutorial? How do we make this more accessible in general to people in our watershed that don't have, the intricate knowledge that comes with really accessing this information and using the model? So thank you. All right, now we're moving on to Radoshi from MAPC for the Resilient Neponset Regional Climate Collaborative work.
Thanks, Karen. We'll just give this is a good time to take a stand back and zoom out and see what we've been doing with the regional Neponset Climate Collaborative group. And we'd like to give you a quick snapshot into what we've been up to and where we stand with the implementation work plan. Next slide, please, Gary. Then you can just move to the next one. All right, so this work plan is sort of the natural progression and extension, if you will, of the framework for regional collaboration on climate resilience. That was the document that was developed and created in phase one. Now, this document really did a lot of the groundwork where the collaborative was put together and the priorities for the region was identified. So this framework consolidated the regional climate impacts and what impacts the region was worried about, such as extreme heat, inland flooding, and prioritizing the strategies that would benefit from the regional approach rather than the municipality by municipality approach or the community by community approach. So really a lot of that groundwork was already laid in phase one, and in phase two, we wanted to put that into an actionable work plan where we could see it being implemented over the next 3 to 5 years by these municipalities. And we considered the evaluation criteria that were already considered in the framework document for phase one, which was the primary one was centering equity, co-benefit potential, and level of implementation efforts by just time and by cost as well, two very important things when, municipalities are asked to implement these kinds of efforts. So really what we want to create in terms of the implementation work plan by the end of phase two is an actionable step-by-step blueprint for the municipalities to work on shared priorities and get grant funding on a lot of these action projects and get concrete measurable outcomes out of these. So we had multiple iterative meetings with the collaboratives where with the project team, we brainstormed on a couple of these shared priorities. There were a lot of different criteria for these, which we considered. And of course, like I said, I can't emphasize the importance of centering equity in it, which once we share out the roadmaps for feedback, you'll see that we really made sure that we can have those implemented in each of these blueprints. Next slide, please. So this is how we organize the implementation actions through each of these meetings. When we considered the strategies, broadly, we narrowed them into strategies by we presented some of the options to the collaborative, whether they would like to organize strategies by shared priorities, whether they would like to organize it by timeline of projects, midterm to short term to long term. And what we landed on was shared priorities of the region. And we chose 3 strategies, which we'll get into in the next slide. For each of these strategies, we chose around 2 to 3 priority actions, and we developed an implementation roadmap or that blueprint, which I was talking about, for each of these priority actions separately. Kerry, if you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So these are the 3 categories that we landed on with the collaborative after some brainstorming. So the priority strategies were organized by the shared priorities and the topic that they are addressing. So for infrastructure improvements, and obviously you can imagine that this was really assimilating the priorities that were identified in phase one, as well as, revisiting them and workshopping them to incorporate new priorities that might have come out in the last year or so with the collaborative. So really what we saw was the need for priority actions in infrastructure improvements. So this ranges from upgrading and assessing aging infrastructure, and then assessing, analyzing future threats to critical infrastructure. And we can tie this back to the flooding that happened with the Norwood Hospital that we've been talking about in this meeting. So really being able to assess those, and then assessing transportation routes, bridges, culverts. So the infrastructure would cover all of these. So we have a couple of action items there. Natural resources, ecological restoration, and open space preservation is also a really big and important one, where we have a couple of priority actions. One covers wetlands, creation, preservation, and protection of wetlands. And the other one is preservation and creation of pocket parks and green infrastructure, which would have like really, we considered cooling and extreme heat as one of the largest co-benefits out of those. And for policy and planning, this was more, we took a regulatory lens and in this shared priority. So this would be reviewing the bylaws across the municipalities, or maybe picking out some specific bylaws relating to floodplain, looking at infrastructural improvements through the lens of regulatory updates, looking at minimizing the creation of impervious surfaces through zoning or parking requirements. So something that the regulatory aspect of what municipalities would need to change or update or edit in order to proceed with these actionable outcomes. So this is how the strategies were, the shared priorities were arranged. For the next slide, we have, this is an example of one of the priority actions under, we have two examples here. One is to protect and promote the preservation and creation of wetlands, including restoration of failed wetlands and floodplain areas. And then we grouped it by the climate risk it addressed, as well as the project type. In this case, both the examples provided are under technical assistance that would need to be provided to communities. And the other one, which I believe Karen might have shared out earlier, is enhanced cooling in pocket parks and street to park conversions, integrate opportunities to add new green space into street improvement projects, and provide spray parks in neighborhoods currently in hotspot areas or lacking resources such as cooling centers. So like the diagram that we just saw, we identified these shared priorities. Each of those shared priorities have their own priority actions, around 2 to 4 under each of those 3. And then each priority action has a roadmap implementation blueprint under each of them. Next slide, please. So we just wanted to give you a snapshot into the parameters that we considered for each of these implementation roadmaps. One, the way that these are laid out is they have a short description of the priority action and why the group chose that, why that was a priority. Then choosing the implementation lead and support. The lead is the municipal department, or in some cases departments that will be leading the implementation process, and the supporting departments with relevant roles in the priority action. Then we have an outline of the key implementation steps, and this is like a series of steps that can be taken in a subsequent manner to achieve that priority action. Then we have implementation partners, which are really any kind of stakeholders that can partner in this endeavor, like state agencies, community organizations, local agencies as well, to coordinate during the process. Next slide, please. Potential co-benefits would be the additional benefits that result from the implementation of the action beyond the direct outcome. Then we have a list of funding sources, potential funding sources for the municipality to pursue. Improving equity, we've put in some points and consideration to ensure that there is equitable outreach in order to achieve that priority action. And lastly, but definitely not the least, we have a list of some measures of success or indicators that will evaluate the impact and the effectiveness of the action. So this is how we laid out these implementation work plans. Of course, this is through multiple iterations of meeting with the collaborative, seeing what would work best for them. But these are all, these could have their own limitations, but based on the information that we have received, this is the best path forward that we have identified to really make these outcomes much more actionable in the next 3 to 5 years. And of course, there's going to be a lot of trial and error going through each of these actionable outcomes, but we're hoping that this implementation work plan will really serve as the blueprint that the municipalities in the Neponset region need to move forward with these actions. This is a draft that we're putting in progress. We haven't shared the full form of the draft with you yet, but we'll definitely do so. And we'd love to hear feedback from you when we send those out. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Yeah, any questions? I'd like to pause for questions. I may have missed some questions in the chat. All right. I will also drop my email ID in the chat. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions. But this is like the 101 overview of what we've been up to with the collaborative, and we hope you'll have some feedback for the draft when we send it out. Thank you.
That's
Over to
great,
you, Karen.
Radoshi. Thank you so much. You know, we did send out a link to kind of the portion, the document that we had drafted. So I think
Right.
that people reading through that can give a really good understanding of what's ahead. So feedback on that will be helpful as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. And we're moving to Carrie to talk about what's next. And continue to offer questions in the chat if they come up for you.
Yes, definitely. So the deadline is fast approaching. It's Friday for the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program Action Grants. The project team does definitely want to keep moving forward. It seems like lots of you and the municipalities also want to keep this moving forward. So we are busy putting that application together, and we'll be submitting that with Canton as the fiscal agent this time, leading the charge for all of us. So we are proposing another 2-year project so that we've got time to get everybody involved. And on the community engagement side, we are hoping to evolve this group into a climate action team. So we would love it if you wanted to remain involved as part of this team. We'd also like to grow it and identify some organizations that might want to take on a bigger role, a more active role as a community liaison. And we envision these community liaisons as being community-based organizations who would be compensated for their time in sort of leading their communities in engagement around climate adaptation issues and projects with the support of our project team. And we would get together a couple of times a year to do some peer learning and figure out what's working and what's not, what are people's experiences with trying to expand the capacity of residents and business to get involved in these issues and support the changes that are really necessary to make sure that our communities are becoming more resilient to climate change. We also want to continue with our climate adaptation public education. We want to continue being out there, partnering with you, talking to your members and your constituencies, and really making sure that people understand that while climate change impacts can be overwhelming, and we hear about them all the time, there are actions that we can take, and we can make we can help our communities to be ready to bounce back after a severe storm or a heat wave, and we can make sure that those resources that are necessary to keep people safe and healthy are available and resilient to those impacts as well. We also want to continue using the model and evolving the model that Anna's just gone through. So one, we're talking about preparing a toolbox to provide that technical assistance that Radoshi mentioned, to provide towns with the tools they need to implement, especially some of these policy implementations, to make sure that, for example, construction is happening in a resilient way, so that we're taking into account future rainfall predictions and things that buildings are going to need, that stormwater infrastructure is going to need, to make sure that communities are not going to be as impacted as the climate changes. We want to use the model to evaluate the impact of those policy changes. So, we can plug into the model, if every town changes their zoning code in this particular way, and reduces lot sizes, for example, or reduces parking requirements, what will that do? How will that affect what we're predicting as future flooding in 2070, for example? We also want to use the model to take a look at potential flood storage, those low-lying areas that might be ripe for storing some of those floodwaters, but also where those hot spots are, those heat island effects when we get heat waves, and where do those overlap? Where would it be best to have those nature-based solutions that have those co-benefits of storing water, slowing it down, but also promoting cooling? The team is talking about coming up with concept design. So sort of a schematic that gives the community sort of a better sense of what some of these nature-based solutions might look like in place, you know, in an area that that has been identified as being feasible to construct it, and then get feedback. You know, is this something that the community wants to see in their neighborhoods? Do they want to see more of it? Do they want to change it? And we also want to sort of help the towns look at their existing capital plans. So, you know, towns are looking at what roads are going to need to be redone, you know, dug up and redone, what pipes are going to need to be replaced. And if they're already digging up a street, you know, what kinds of green infrastructure and flood reduction strategies can we build into that? If they're already digging up the street, you know, can they put in a structure that will help water to infiltrate into the groundwater instead of just running off into the stormwater drains? So, so these are the types of things that we're looking at for phase 3. And I know we're throwing it at you for the first time tonight, but given your experience over the last year, I know many of you have attended our public meetings, the broader regional public meetings, as well as these meetings here. And I'm wondering if, given that very brief description I just gave, you know, what are your initial impressions of what we think, you know, we'd like to do after hearing from you over the last 2 years, after hearing from municipal officials over the last 2 years? You know, this is sort of what we've come up with, but we'd love to know your initial thoughts. We'd also love to know if you'd be interested in participating as a community liaison, or if there are different activities that you'd like to see happen in your community, led by these community liaisons, to help your neighbors get more involved in climate adaptation advocacy or you know, planning processes. And we also want to know, like, how can this project and this program support the work that you're doing in your community around some of these issues or related issues? And you don't have to answer all at once tonight, but if you've got initial thoughts, we'd love to hear them, either in the chat or take yourself off mute. But we will be sending out a follow-up email and asking you these questions after you've been able to give it some thought. And that's my spiel. So does anybody have any initial reaction to what we're thinking about for a phase 3?
This is Jean, and I think there's still a lot of need to help community members understand the impacts of stormwater. Actually, they've seen it in our town in several ways, but the alternatives and what we can do. And I'm willing to stay involved. I've got to be careful I don't get over involved, but it's fine. And I'm very interested in doing this. Even some of the administrative things. I wish I knew somebody who had a lot of money who could come and help start our hospital up, but anyway, separate topic.
I'd love to see that hospital come back too. That was the one I used.
I think it's great I think people, I can think of a lot of people that I know that would be really excited to participate in a climate resiliency measure like this that is so local, because I think a lot of people right now, you know, there's a lot going on in the federal political stage and whatnot, like a lot of people feeling like they can't do anything about anything, but this is so local and so impactful. I think that's really a positive trait, and I think something that a lot of people will be interested in helping with.
Thanks to you both.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. She had said the Dedham Justice, I can't remember.
Dedham Junior Women's Club. I
Oh,
know
Junior Women's
the
Club,
junior
okay.
doesn't refer to age, just
It-
yeah,
it-
just so you know.
Awesome. Yeah, if you can partner us with who might be interested in carrying the torch forward and what that might look like, and how you might lead some of the educational aspects that you feel would benefit Dedham around some of the community resilience and climate adaptation knowledge that we would hope to spread and to become more widely known.
Well, like I said, I don't want to put you all on the spot, but think about these things. I mean, think about them into the future. But we are, trying to pull this together in the next couple of days, and sort of fine tune it. So if you've got thoughts, Ian has thoughts.
I guess I have a question rather than thoughts, and maybe it's for Jean or maybe it's for other people. I'm curious, Jean, you seem to think that we've barely scratched the surface in terms of people understanding stormwater and how stormwater is connected to flooding and all that. And I'm just curious if you have thoughts of like how you would approach trying to get the word out more effectively in town, if that's a broad-based thing, or is that just pursuing town meeting members, or what would be your strategy to get the word out?
I've always believed that children lead the way, and in working with the town, they're doing good things like putting solar on top of the old landfill, but they're also going to fence it off where we may not be able to take the kids up there to walks to see Boston. And, so I'm trying to coordinate a couple of things where it allows kids to stay involved and actually encourages them to understand the interactions of things, because I'm not a teacher in a school, but it just seems so important to me. They take it home to their families, they take it home to their relatives. Anyway, that's my first thought.
Thanks.
That's great. Oh, go ahead, Ian.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll just mention that I've had conversations with Kendra surrounding an initiative that they're currently doing with art therapy related to climate resilience and climate change. And what a great project, and a number of offerings that brings the community together to talk about these things and how does it impact them and how does it impact their lives, and the way they go about living life, given the thoughts that this is going to impact us all and in different ways. So initiatives like that, just different ways to bring about engaging the community, and also talking with Mattapan Food and Fitness about a youth summit, and the youth talking about their concerns and what they've learned about community climate justice in the community, and how they can better equip the community to understand the impacts and how we build resilience and what that means. So yeah, those are just some snapshots of things that are occurring to us that might be possibilities. So it doesn't have to be all the like flood modeling and the really technical and scientific stuff. There's many aspects and ways to approach this work in engaging community. Oh, thanks, Kendra. That's awesome. And having attended one that was just incredibly effective, and it was a great way to bring people together from many generations, from many places and neighborhoods that, yeah, just wouldn't normally come together. So it was really a meaningful engagement for sure.
So Carrie, as far as this liaison role, are you going to be expanding this to ask folks in the public to become involved? Or, I
Yes,
mean,
we would
okay.
we would like you know, we would like a core group of people who are, you know, who are very engaged around this, who are very interested in this, to sort of take the lead and be that conduit with their communities. You know, as sort of as the project team gets to know them, you know, you could be the trusted face, you know, in Foxborough. People know you, they trust the information that you have. And so, you know, we'd like to bring a group of people together to learn from one another and, you know, support that from the project team.
So bringing this back to what Echo had just mentioned about people being interested, I went to the my representative Auchincloss's meeting yesterday. He had a town hall in Attleboro, and he most of the folks had, you know, most people had questions. It was crazy. It was great. But the main question that most people had is, what can I do here? And there were, because he's a climate, you know, advocate, there were many climate folks in the crowd. And his big, huge idea is, what you can do is find an organization, not a candidate. He made sure that was clear, an organization that you believe in, and work with them at the local level. And that was his main message. And there were hundreds of people in this auditorium, so, and also cafeteria. So this could be something that might be something that they're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah. So do you want me to just, should I send something to him and let him know that we have this?
Yeah, we are definitely, I mean, this funded project ends at the end of June, but you know, certainly NEPRA, whether we get funded for phase 3 or not, NEPRA is going to continue with this work to
Okay.
the, you know, to the extent that we can. So yes, we would love for people to contact us. And
Okay, I'll fire that off to him. I think he'll be thrilled to hear this. So, thank you.
yeah. All right, Karen, I know we have another poll.
Great. Well, thank you all. That was really helpful, and hopefully it's getting you starting to think about possibilities and you know, yeah, think creatively and be in touch with us, because if we get approved for the grant, we're really excited about moving ahead with with several possibilities to engage further with you, kind of, as Carrie said, with you as our frontline people, and then helping you build capacity to then reach more deeply into the community, and those trusted relationships just continue to build with time and with work together. So we look forward to building those networks. And with that, you know, we're just really thrilled with the work that we've been able to do with you all, and all that you've contributed to our phase 2 planning, you know, which really, of course, informs and launches where we go from here. So in May, we'd love to do a wrap-up thank you session where, for one time, we come together in person. We tried that in Norwood, and I think we only had 2 committee members. We had a good showing. Everybody else was online, but we'd love to bring you all together, you know, some food, some conversation, a chance to just kind of wrap up and see where we felt things went well, where we could improve, and then talk about what's next. And maybe I don't know, when do we find out about the grant? Probably not till June, Carrie, but
Yeah,
if
I
we
think they're saying July.
Oh, July. Okay. So, you know, maybe if some of your thoughts are coming together, maybe that's a chance to talk about some of those community building opportunities, engagement that might come to mind for you over the next month or so. So we're going to pledge a poll, and then you'll give us an idea. Is that something you're interested in? And then maybe look at your calendars. If there are dates mid-May, those may be the second or third week of May, that are out, let us know so that we can hopefully draw as many people as possible. We'd be talking middle of the watershed, like someplace in Canton. So if you would launch that, Ian, that'd be great. Interesting. I didn't get the poll. I just got the answers. Is that?
Oh, that might be because I made you a co-host.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's
a little
fine.
bit ago.
Yeah, that's
So
what
you
I'm
may-
seeing too,
You may be
Oh,
seeing
okay.
the behind the scenes view.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think that changed during the meeting. So when I could see the first one, but couldn't see this one, that was what.
See, this is why I find the polls confusing when you're trying to run the Zoom meeting, because you don't see the same thing as everybody else.
Exactly.
Looks like we have 72% of people on have responded so far.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. So yeah, 78% looks like they are interested. That would be great. So yeah, it would really come down to date. Of course, we'll extend this to everybody that's on the advisory group, and even those that started with the advisory group maybe didn't continue. Two of us joined the NEPR staff, so it has become a recruiting vehicle as well, ironically and interestingly. So we will definitely hope to hear a positive response from other people that have been involved as well. And those answers for dates and things like that, Ian, is that something that we can gather, but others don't see?
I believe so, yes.
Yes,
I
we're able
believe
to see those.
that'll be saved. The short answers about dates will be saved in the when you log into Zoom.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, and if anything, and if there's anything you could email us that you didn't know tonight about dates that don't work for you, please let us know. And we will, as usual, be in touch for compensation purposes if you so choose that for yourself or your organization. We want to make sure that we get that information from you so that we can pay that out. And if you took time to review some of the information in preparation for the meeting, please consider that time, meeting time as well. We want to be respectful of everything that you've given as far as your time and talent to helping us do this work. So we couldn't be more appreciative of all you all have done over the year and a half to be with us in the work. Any other questions or comments or thoughts to wrap us up?
I was going to say it's not a process where you have to vote, but I'd like to wrap it up, and I want to say thank you to Carrie and all the presenters and all the people who are representing small groups like I am in the community, because one of the things I found, it was very rewarding just to share with them where our heating and cooling centers are and why, and get their thoughts on some of the things we might do. So
That's great.
Karen, there is one question in the chat that I just wanted to mention, Karen. It's from Nicole. Would the final meeting be open if we wanted to bring other interested community members?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Carrie, we can talk about that. We'll look at budget, and maybe each person that's been involved could bring one person that is interested in also being involved. So maybe a way to start to span that network. So yeah, I like that suggestion.
Yeah, I hadn't thought, right, you do compensate for, I hadn't thought about that part, but I was just thinking if you're, thinking of a phase 3 and beyond, there are probably other interested members of my group. And then also there's a Manor Neighborhood Association, which is heavily impacted by flooding here in Dedham. And they've had a lot of community meetings about this flood model also. So it's just possible, like people might be interested to come. And if you're looking for those liaisons for phase 3, it could be an interesting thing.
That's great. Yeah, good reminder, Nicole. Thank you. And yeah, and I guess we haven't touched on the Manor neighborhood so much because they do have their own MVP grant. So we don't want to have mission creep too much because theirs is so specifically geared to them. Though of course they're in our area of concern and of course in our mapping as well as where catchments and mitigative strategies are important and critical. So yes. Appreciate you raising that.
Yeah, and that project actually came out of phase 1 of this project. And we are partnering with them on an application for, to move that one forward as well in the next year.
Okay, interesting. Good to know.
Yeah. Exciting stuff all around.
Well, great. Anything else? Anyone has questions or parting thoughts? Well, thank you all. It really has been a pleasure and look forward to seeing you in May. I'm going to be really hopeful that everybody can make it. I know it's unrealistic, but we look forward to shaking hands and being in person and sharing some food together. So it's always good to break bread in when you build relationships. So we look forward to that possibility. Awesome. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Julia, congratulations. Good luck on graduation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
If you're able to join us, we'd love to see you too. Bring your underclass person that'll be like replacing.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Thanks.